of Ukraine Crisis Media Center. I'm really glad to welcome you here in this room. It happened so that today we have two press tours in this room. Ukrainian and Georgian colleagues met, and we used this opportunity in order to first to communicate, and you will be able to speak off records after our panel discussion. And also we have international audience and Ukrainian audience, and we invited speakers from Estonia in order to speak about our way to Europe. And we have been speaking about this topic many times, and we made a conclusion that journalists are main actors in this process. You are those who present this information to those who need this information, and communication between power and journalists, those who deal with this topic. This should be of quality, and the way you provide this information to your audience is of importance. The way how you present this information to the viewers and listeners, and we understand that each country has its own way. We understand that we move with different speed, and we are all at different stages. And each country in one or another point of this way, and the representatives of power, they inform us about our successes and problems, tasks we face. Together with the Estonian Center of Eastern Partnership, for the second time we raised this topic in order to provide our citizens of our countries understanding that we are speaking not only about geography, we are speaking about changes in values, changes in understanding and perception of those changes that are ongoing on paper or in our life due to reforms. And first of all, we would like to find right messages in order to explain to our citizens the essence of this way, the value of this way, and what should be strategic communications. So we have our honorable guests. These are Hannes Rumm, Strategic Communications Advisor to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Estonia, Jaan Reinhold, Director of the Estonian Center for Eastern Partnership, Ambassador at Large for the Eastern Partnership concerning policy of Eastern Partnership, Andrii Klymchuk, who represent the Office of the Vice Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration of Ukraine, and he deals with cooperation with the media, and Volodymyr Yermolenko, Director of European Programs, Internews Ukraine. First, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Jaan Reinhold in order that he told us about the mood of Eastern Partnership, and then we will be speaking about the way of Ukraine and the way of Estonia. And I ask our Georgian colleagues to join in discussion, and in order to say about most successful messages of your power towards the citizens in your country, and whether positive changes happened after this. On behalf of Estonian Center of Eastern Partnership, I would like to thank the organizers, our very good partners, Ukraine Crisis Media Center, for organizing this press tour, and that you really created a great agenda of the meeting that is really great, and we are going to continue our joint work in the framework of Eastern Partnership. For many years we have good programs and prospects, and also we can discuss issues of Russian propaganda, and here we have good prospects, and we will continue, and you will hear a lot about our partnership in the future. First, I would like to open this topic of Eastern Partnership. I would like to speak about the history of Eastern Partnership policy, and also to speak about Estonian prospect, why this topic is important for us, for Estonia, for the EU. And I would like to comment why I believe that this is a very important topic for our Eastern Partnership partners. And 2017, this is the year of Eastern Partnership. Recently, we had a meeting in Brussels. It was Summit of Eastern Partnership, and we reviewed what we've done in 2 years, and we also provided the plans for the next period. And for Estonia, this year is really important. We represented the European Union this half year, and our government stated that Eastern Partnership was one of the main priorities for us in our foreign policy. And you know that about electronic government, that is a really important achievement for Estonia. Eastern Partnership was created in 2009, and what was the reason why this platform was established, why this policy was introduced? One of the main reasons was what happened in Georgia in 2008. In the EU, they understood that if you look at the territory of the former Soviet Union at that time, each of the republics that were occupied by the Soviet Union, they have some program, some instrument in the relationship with the European Union. You know that the Baltic states, they are part of NATO and the EU, and they they are integrated in the European structures. And 5 countries of Central Asia, there was good dialogue with Europe. There is such an instrument, strategy of Central Asia and EU, and we have 6 countries. We believe we need to address our attention to them, and this is great that this initiative came from 2 active ministers of foreign affairs. At the time, this was from Poland and Sweden, and it shows that Eastern Partnership is not only the project of Eastern or Central Europe or the members of EU member countries, but also this is important for everyone. We've reached a lot during this period, and so if you have one policy for 8 or 9 years, you should understand how to put new issues on the agenda, because all these issues, they are in development. So what we understood during these 8 years, so we can look at these 6 countries. Let's take them in alphabetic order. For example, Armenia, they signed the bilateral agreement with the EU. Azerbaijan also started. There is a dialogue about Azerbaijan, and I cannot tell you exact time, but maybe in 2018 there will be a bilateral document in place, and we will be able to sign it with our Azerbaijan, France, Belarus. Eastern Partnership as a policy. This is the only instrument between the EU and Belarus. We know policy of Belarus really well, and we know that 1.5 years ago, the majority of sanctions were lifted from bilateral agreements, and now we can develop this relationship, and we can explain to our Belarus partners why the EU, why Eastern Partnership, and our Belarus friends, they say that our strategic partner is Russia, and at the same time, this is the EU. And they find their own way, but their economy now is developing, and it will turn to the EU. And we know that that there are problems in the economy. They are connected with one state, and we all know what state. So several years ago, Moldova was one decade of the Eastern Partnership, and they reached a lot of successes, but now we see that rhetorics inside the state, it changed. I visit Chisinau, and I got information that the support of the EU, it was 80%, and now it is 40%. So we should look in the mirror, and also we should communicate properly with our Moldovan friends. And about Georgia and Ukraine, countries you represent here, I see that here the dynamics is the most positive. What we've achieved, if we include 3 countries, including Moldova, these are associated partners of the EU, and DSFTA that also works with the Ukraine, and this is positive. And also we have the Schengen zone that broadened, and now biometric passports holders, they can visit Europe now. So this is really important for us. So Estonia is a small country, but what it really contributes to the EU. So these are funds of development, European and bilateral. So each country can contribute, and Estonia, for us, Eastern Partnership is important. Our funds are 1 million euro. This is for the fund of development. About 4.5 million from this amount goes to European Partnership. In Ukraine, per capita, we are the biggest investor in the sense, because after 2014, we provide about 2.5 million, and to Georgia we provide 1 million euro a year. This is Estonian investment. And also we have good donors, and we have a lot of success stories in your country. And we are really glad that this is happening, and through our expertise we can contribute, and our partners can see that Estonian expertise really works there, and they will want to be a part of it. So this expertise, this help that we provide to your countries, this is much more than those figures that I mentioned. And during our presidency, we paid a lot of attention to Eastern Partnership, and during the last half year we initiated 4 meetings of the ministers of the European Union and Eastern Partnership, and the ministers of Justice and Internal Affairs and the Foreign Affairs Ministry and ministers of Transport. They have met and they had a good dialogue, and also we organized side events to the summit, and these are conferences on legal and digital issues. We created such a team, such a term as e-partnership. We contribute a lot in this area, and we also provided a research on this about electronic sector and its development in Eastern Partnership countries, and we provided recommendations how to promote this area. This is important for you. This will support your reforms. It will show that you are open, that you develop, and in the result, it will support foreign investment in your countries. In order that the economy be transparent, there should be less corruption due to this. So for us, it is really important, and for you, it is also important for our bilateral business. And also, second conference we've organized. This was official side event on civil society. There were a lot of delegations from our countries in Tallinn. They've met and we've discussed how at local level we can influence on decisions that are made on the central level. So we had open discussion, and during our work, in the work of our center, we can continue this work. And also there was business forum, and this was the biggest business event during our presidency, and we have 570 delegates. And previously at our previous forum, at this forum, 70% of all the delegates were businessmen, not just some officials from some chambers or the government. These were serious businessmen, and we had business-to-business platforms, and there were 700 bilateral meetings, and they struck some deals, and practical things appeared. So summing up, I would like to say that for us, Eastern Partnership is not only policy, but politics should support this, and these are proper steps in order to contribute. And we also believe that you should implement reforms further. And in the general plan, I see 2 issues we should work on. So we Estonians and countries of Eastern and Central Europe, we understand you. We understand we went along this way, and we want to convince our partners from Western and Southern Europe. So this is principle more for more. We want that we should convince these countries that this is a bilateral cooperation and strategic cooperation with Poland. Strategic communication it is not about Russian propaganda and counteracting it. This is about what we've done through Eastern Partnership and what Eastern Partnership can do for your people. And we are part of your, and your part is important. And I'm thankful for this meeting, for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is an honor for us. Also, we are glad that we have such advocates in Europe. Thank you that our interests and our problems are recognized by you like your own ones, and you are ready to advocate for us and to promote us in Europe. I would like to address Volodymyr. Is it enough for you, those strategic communications which we offer here in Ukraine, and how do you understand the journalist's role? I would like to continue some messages which have already been pronounced. I agree that accent on the Eastern Partnership is important now in practical plane. I do not know what are the discussions in Georgia or Moldova, but in Ukraine the discussion is it concerns in the expert community what to do between the association agreement and the prospects of accession, which seems now utopical, and it is far, and many diplomats are saying that it is not on the agenda, and we who have been addressing this topic for a long time, we understand this, and this make Ukrainian public disappointed very much. So positive since in European integration plane, it was a visa-free regime as the key result, because every person who has crossed the EU border with biometric passport feel some very interesting psychological thing when the frontier guard do not ask many documents, do not ask for your visa. You feel welcome, you feel free, and this is very important. However, a visa-free regime is a topic of interest for 30% of for Ukrainians. 30% of Ukrainians have usual foreign passports, and only 8% have biometric passports. It is interesting to look at how Ukrainian authorities and European authorities represent their visions for future. What is next? What are the next steps? You presented 20 deliverables list for all Eastern Partnership countries, and they are very good. They could be filled with content, but they are rather general, abstract. Because 6 Eastern Partnership countries differ very much. It is hard to compare Ukraine and Belarus now. Ukrainian authorities said we need 4 goals. Accession to the Customs Union, association with the Schengen space. They are rather utopical things. Then digital integration and the integration with the energy community. Integration with the energy community now is in the deadlock because it works inside the EU, but Ukrainian expert community want to be a part of this union. Our underground storages for gas, our grids, they're very important for Europe. Our pipelines are important for Europe. Where these proposals voiced out by Poroshenko would go, the most realistic is a digital union. The 3 are the proposals, whether Ukraine, does it worse for Ukraine to have a customs union? Will it give more to Ukraine than DCFTA? It is questionable. Then there is a question which rises for Ukrainian general public, how to make this topic more practicable. What does it mean for this region and for specific individuals? To answer this question, many steps should be made. We can say that, for example, the free trade area opens high potential for agrarian businesses, because Ukraine is a large exporter of agricultural products, but the experts would answer that there are many oligarchs in agricultural sector. The EU responds by establishing centers for support to businesses. 15 centers are in the process of establishing. What would be their role? They would provide assistance with expertise and loans. It is very important, but the key issue is whether it would be efficient, because small businesses could go to EBRD, or they could go to Ukrainian banks and get loans. This is very complicated topic in Ukrainian banks. The first question is, what would be the currency if you get in euros, and if Ukrainian currency would fall again, then it would be a catastrophe for you. If the European bank finances you, then this risk is present. So these issues are key issues. On the macro level, Ukraine continues to debate whether we would become members of the EU. This issue is important even emotionally, but far more important is to look on the practical sense. Business forums are extremely important, because Ukrainian SMEs talking about large oligarchic businesses. There are very many cases of success cases who have managed to find partners in European Union, but we can't say that this is a systemic issue. We can't say that this is a systemic trend in the Ukrainian business sector. I wouldn't dare say so, because Ukrainian businesses, they are more oriented to domestic market. They do not speak fluently English, and they do not visit international fairs. But an interesting result could be seen in some years. Our business representatives may start visiting these international fairs, for example, monthly. And previously they should have made visas, and now they should not. They just can use the biometric passports and visit any business fairs. The same concerns scientists, cultural workers, students. The second issue, where we go. Now, along with the Office of the Vice Prime Minister, we are moving. That was one of the ideas, strategy of communications. We were assisting to the Vice Prime Minister office to develop this strategy, and it has been adopted by the government. We have always believed it would be adopted. The idea of the strategy is on the one hand, we understand that when you try to communicate on the Euro integration topic, you should explain, because everything is very complicated. The association agreement in full has been read maybe by two persons, those persons who were parts of negotiations. There are very many nuances where you can't forecast results specifically for your country. You can say, for example, that Ukraine is moving towards harmonization in the agricultural domain, and the new body to be established for monitoring of veterinarians and so on and so forth. But this bureaucratic process is very complicated, and when this body would be established in practice in 1 year or 2 years' time, it is hard to say. So we try to use the other path. In Ukraine it is called to inspire. We are saying that European integration is not only top-bottom process, it is not only what is happening in the government and in the parliament. Some laws are adopted and then something happens at the bottom level, at the grassroots. The European integration is the process of changing the tissue of the society on the grassroots, rather via ideas in the society. And a very important topic of inside the integration is decentralization. It is not directly related to it, but it is about land, resources, funds. And decentralization could be one of the keys to success. Although there are very many problems concerning this, we started to create cases of success of some businesses entering the markets of the EU, of some people who build zero energy consumption houses, and cases where some schools started to sort their waste, earning money. And when the critical mass of stories would be accumulated, then people would be inspired by the neighboring projects. I understand the discourse of bureaucrats and policymakers, because this discourse, it creates the framework, and the association agreement also creates the framework. But whether you would move along this framework, would you run, it depends on the locomotive, whether you will be doing something. How to communicate European integration? We try to say that association agreement is very important, DCFTA is very important, but European integration is not only association agreement, bureaucracy and legislation and adaptation of EU regulations, but and directives. However, local level changes at the local level are very important. We tested several success stories. We made videos on internet, and people started reposting them, sharing them. So this is my answer to the question on strategic communications. Well, your response was long but very important. In Ukrainian, the approach is understandable. It is perhaps the most proper way to address neighbors. It is by your own success story. I would like to give the floor to Andrei. Maybe there are some inspiring messages from our government. How do you work? Thank you, Ms. Tetyana. Yes, I would like to communicate some good news about landing. The cooperation with 3 European banks started. The loans will be provided. This is good news. When I was preparing, I thought to tell you some things, but then I understood that I will be telling you about other things. Yes, association agreement could be explained in different terms. The visa-free regime, it was quite another process. They are parallel processes. What I wanted to tell, I would like to thank to Mr. Ambassador for very important messages. It is important to communicate not only in order to oppose Russian aggression. Talking about Ukraine, we can't tell about we should tell about strategic communications as combating Russian aggression. This is the basics. This is like cleaning the floor before starting your work. This information space, mental space, which was left by Russia here as a heritage. When someone is saying that the agreement is complicated and it should be explained, I took some examples with me. The 2 best cases I can use, their visa-free regime and duty-free quotas. We have one magazine. I can give you some names of the articles. Here are news. The news of May 8, before the visa-free regime. The fate of Ukraine was given to the agricultural sector and fisheries sector. This is manipulation. That ministers of agriculture and fishery are in charge of visa-free regime. The EU has some procedures. That is why the EU is so successful, because they follow their procedures and regulation. It happens so that according to the schedule, the Council of Ministers of Agriculture and Fishery, yes, indeed, they considered Ukrainian visa-free regime issue, but it does not say whether it is good or bad. So the piece of news, if we look at it, the news was about these ministers who would approve the visa liberalization, and the long-awaited thing would happen. So from the good news, the bad news was made. Now, May 11th this year, in 3 days' time, we read the same result that the EU named the conditions on which Ukrainian visa-free regime would be abandoned. The EU named the conditions which may result in cancellation of visa-free regime in any developing countries. It would not be cancelled it should say, this article should say, that the conditions on which visa-free regime could be cancelled are as follows. But this article title said that Ukraine will be deprived from visa-free regime. So this message articulate or form some shape some image of the EU which demands something from us, which would like to cancel something. So bad image of the EU is formed, and visa-free regime could become paid. In several days' time, this piece of news was published in the same mass media source. So the message was that the visa-free regime could be payable. This is not about visas. And this is not concerning Ukrainians. This concerns all the developing world. But the message is that the EU attitude to Ukraine is not very good. The next is duty-free regime for exporters. This means that the EU lifted duties and provided quotas for some products exportation from Ukraine. In Ukraine, often it was communicated so that when talking about quotas, they talk as about quoting some products. So this is very dangerous. Ukraine has already beyond the limits of quotas on wheat. So if there are no quotas for wheat, then we can't export more wheat to the EU. But the practices demonstrate that even once tariff quotas are over, anyway, businesses can export further their products if they are enough of adequate quality, even beyond the limits of these quotas. This is the preferences, but the article is saying that upon quota is when the quota is over, Ukraine can't export something. So for you to understand this mass media source via its pieces of news, prepare recipients. The next news is the losses from the trade war with Russia is amounts to $1 billion. So it seems as if Ukraine announced war against Russia, but not vice versa. And now Ukraine experiences losses because of this war declared by Ukraine to Russia. So this demonstrates that we experience very serious influence from abroad, external impact on Ukrainian domestic information space. So the messages are that you go somewhere where you are not waited for. It would be better for you to return to the common space with Russia, but not to proceed your way to the EU. And these seeds, they fall into the very fertile soil. I would like to explain. For many years of Soviet ideology present here and the influence of the neighboring country, you know what country, so there is the mentality which sometimes seen in Ukraine that some is responsible for you, for your life, or for your standard of life. So some wrong image of the EU is created. I do not remember the author. Do not make another communism from the European Union. It seems to me a very true message. All these manipulations, they would have less effect, they would have less impact, and they would be less efficient if the soil in Ukraine is not so fertile after the Soviet Union times. Our people sometimes perceive the European Union as the place, as the object giving something. Where you come, once you come there, you will be given something. But I want the discourse to be in the plane which you have mentioned already. The discourse should be that the EU is, first of all, the rules, the procedures, adhering to which you become efficient and rich and developing respectively. So, coming back to the prospects of becoming a member of the EU, we have the association agreement for 10 years. During these 10 years, we should bring all spheres of our lives to the standards of the European Union. For example, Norway is not a member of the EU, but its citizens live at good standards. So we should bring our procedures, our human rights, and intangible things so that we become efficient. We are talking about fishing line, not about fish. Of course, communicating these processes in the agricultural technical barriers to trade, this is what we are doing now. For example, with our colleagues from the governmental office on European integration and from the EU office on integration with the EU, we are working jointly on the set of infographics to present our achievements in different domains and to provide narrations to explain to the general public what these achievements have provided to us. I am also involved in preparing these materials. It is very complicated to explain the advantages of COSME agreement, of ACAI agreement, on technical regulations and certificates, mutual recognitions of Ukraine and the EU, and it is very difficult to talk about all these things when in Ukraine and in the EU the trends, populistic trends are very common. When you give answers to some questions for 5 pages and the populist can explain with 2 sentences. Here we will ban and there we will allow something. On the one hand, we should to speak about the EU as about rules. On the other hand, to fill the information gap because this gap is used by this populace writing these silly things. If the society is enough aware of everything, if someone communicate to people that the EU means the rules and procedures, when the visa-free regime was adopted, the commands were provided every day in a very simple terms. All Ukrainians understood how this works, but well-aware society could hardly be cheated. When people know something, when people are informed, they could not be cheated easily.
І вибачте, пані Тетяно, ще забув.
So I forgot about one thing. I forgot to illustrate what we do in order to prevent this. Show the slide, please. This is our work with regional media, and they complain that there is lack of information, the place where they can come and find all this information about the ongoing processes and the explanations on the reforms ongoing in Ukraine concerning the European integration. And for this, several weeks we do the digest, and you will be able to sign up to this digest. We issue it each Monday in the morning, and we send it to people who want to get it. And here we collected the information. It is in some sections, and doesn't move. So, and here you see the news of the week. Decentralization, we were speaking about ecology. Here are news from the parliament, government, and other related things, interesting references. So here are infographics for this information. So if you want, please sign up for our digest, and I present here the e-address. So we should fill this information vacuum. We should remember that there is war that is ongoing, and there are enemies that really do not want to see us successful, but we do everything possible in order to be successful. Thank you. Thank you, Andrii. And now I would like to give the floor to Hannes Rumm. I would like to give the floor to Hannes Rumm. So you heard about the approach of our experts from macro level to grassroots projects and the successful technologies, successful examples. To fill the information space with the correct information, not fighting with some windmills and propaganda. So what was the way of Estonia in strategic communications? What were the messages in information space? What messages were provided by you in order to change attitude of citizens of your country? Thank you. I would like to say that Estonians, from the moment we joined the EU, it happened 13 years ago, and if we look at the issues of public opinion, Estonians supported the EU, and they supported the membership of Estonia in the European Union, and it can be easily explained. At that time, when we were the members of the European Union, the well-being of citizens increased significantly. When we became the members of the European Union, our GDP, before this, it was 45% of average in EU, and now it grew up to 75% of average GDP of the European Union. So people feel this, that the membership in the EU helped us economically. So this is not just overall economy. Each citizen feels that they have more money, and they see that there was a development, and Estonia exports 70% to other markets of the EU of its products, and these markets are open for Estonia. There are no customs duties, and people feel benefit from this. And another example, in the EU, there is a principle of open labor market, and if 9 years ago we had an economic crisis, those people who were left without job, they went to Finland freely, and they were paid the same money that was paid to Finns, and they had the same social guarantees that enjoyed by Finns. And during economic crisis in Estonia, the unemployment didn't rise. Those people who were out of job, they went to other countries of the EU, and mainly in Finland. And this is one of the examples how open labor market works in the EU. What I wanted to tell today, what I wanted to say today, that Estonia, there was a period of time when we wanted to become the members of the EU, and sometimes we thought that this process is humiliating because we are not in the club. We knock on the door, but they didn't open. But this was such an experience that we share with you. And Georgia and Ukraine, they knock on the door of the European Union, and it is not so easy to open this door, and emotionally it can be difficult, but it is understandable, and the experience of Estonia shows that it can be done, and Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they are the members of the European Union, and before this, in 1990s, in the EU, they wanted to accept Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, but not the Baltic states, because we were geographically separated, and our level of economy was lower, and we had to show results. And in Poland, it was natural. They knew that they will be accepted in the EU. They they didn't need so many reforms that we needed, and for us, they were looking at us for a long time, and we had to implement all the requirements of Maastricht and other agreements, and to show that we are ready economically to join, and also that we are democratic, that we don't have corruption, and our judiciary is independent from the state. And we had to explain this once and once again, and sometimes it was humiliating for us to do this, and sometimes I believe that Georgia and Ukraine, they are in this position And you should show that you are really able to go up to this European level. This is not always about the membership in the European Union. You should once and once again prove that you are really developing and you are going to the European level. And for you, the most important, whether you be the members of the European Union or not, but I would like to say about Estonian experience that the process that in political and an economic sphere we reached a lot of results, and it helped our people on a daily level, both economically and politically. And I believe that journalists should ask politicians when, not the questions that when we will become the members, but you should speak more about development of your country in economic and political sphere, that your people will live better and their well-being will reach a new level, and the membership in the European Union and cooperation with the European Union, this is not goal in itself. And your society, it should develop in the direction of the European Union, and Estonian experience shows that this improves lives of simple people, common Ukrainians and Georgians. Thank you. Thank you for this inspirational speech. And I understand that you communicated Estonia more for the European Union than Europe for your citizens, but for us this is a bilateral way. So we communicate not only to the EU, but also we should explain to our own citizens why they need these values and these changes. So I worked for the European Commission as a representative of the Commission in Estonia, and then I explained to people in Estonia the decisions of the EU. Sometimes they were not popular in Estonia. When there was migration crisis, I had to explain to Estonians why 200 people from foreign countries should be accepted, and these decisions were not popular in Estonia. So I have experience from both sides. So Volodymyr mentioned visa-free regime as one of the most successful steps, results, practical results. And speaking about the experience in the work of Ukraine Crisis Media Center, we organized a trip of journalists to Poland, and 9 of these people, they didn't have passports before this, foreign passports at all. So for our regions, the issue of visa-free regime is not mainly a priority, so we should find right messages for people. And I would like to give the floor to the journalists, to our guests, to join the discussion, to present their views, and to give you the opportunity to ask questions. So please, you will have several minutes each if this is the question, so please take the mic and introduce yourself first.
I'd like to introduce myself. I am Andrii Klymchuk from Georgia. I'm a host of one program at the public channel of Ether TV channel. There is a religious minority in our area where propaganda from Russia is affected. The community is affected by Russian propaganda. I should say, unfortunately, I believe all of us, especially in the Western Europe, look at these issues not in conceptual way. In 2007, first disintegration of NATO and EU, it is important for Moldova and Ukraine. In 2007, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, in his speech in Munich said that the largest tragedy of the 20th century, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 2008 in Bucharest, NATO responded with a declaration that you are saying one thing, Mr. President, but we are saying that Georgia and Ukraine, as they strive to access NATO, they would become sometime members of NATO. But the other thing, what happened in Ukraine during Yanukovych reign, but NATO promised that the Ukraine and Georgia would become members. The EU is saying very good. Very good. This is an association agreement to you. And the EU is saying here is the Schengen zone, visa-free zone.